After the marathon of the Monster Association arc comes the Psychic Sister arc. And I'm glad it did, because it was a breath of fresh air. Love it or hate it, the Monster Association arc was long, to say the least. It was full of loose threads and plot holes. This arc, at least to me, was a majestic return to form. One Punch Man, to me, is best when it's playing both ballparks, where we can get our overly serious shonen narrative, but also have that One Punch Man charm of diffusing every situation with our main lead, Saitama. And I know that this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think that this arc is a perfect case study as to why this style of storytelling has merit. This arc has a fairly emotionally deep narrative running through it. We touch on things like depression, loneliness, family, and trauma. We have our sisters and this mysterious research group running their own narrative threads through the arc. However, for every moment that is overly serious and dramatic, we have a moment where Saitama is diffusing said situation or a situation with slapstick comedy, accompanied with a fairly strong message right at the end. The last arc was overly dramatic, and we lost sight of Saitama multiple times throughout it. And when he was involved, it wasn't the normal tone shift that we'd expect Saitama's entry into the story to have. Usually when Saitama gets involved, he quickly shuts down the situation in either a mundane way to revert expectations or a funny way to diffuse the big, edgy, serious bomb that's about to go off. But the over-dramification of the Garo fight, in my opinion, went a little too heavy with the dramatics. I understand that some readers might like to see Saitama finally being able to go all out for once. But why shouldn't the motive for him going all out just be the motive he's had since the start of the, entire series? Which is for him to just have an even fight with someone. That motive makes way more sense and is earned, unlike the death of a comrade. This arc does not disappoint in the same way as the last one did. Within the first few chapters, we're dropped into situations like Saitama adopting Sperm and Grover, Saitama making Meta Knight's robots blow up on him, Genos giving every detail related to Saitama from the entire Monster Association arc, Math dunking on BTS, King scaring a crap out of the A-ranks that are trying to intimidate Saitama, and one of those A-ranks getting hit by a car when he's trying to fight Saitama. And also just how fucking cute Grover is. These are the parts of the stories that I missed from the Monster Association arc, where Saitama's absent felt like I was reading an entirely different story. That's not to say that the serious narratives aren't important, because they are. Without them, there's no contrast or payoff for Saitama's delivery. And you can claim, wrongly I might add, that the serious elements haven't always existed in previous parts of the story, because they have. Whether it was Genos and his tragic backstory, or Moomin Rider's philosophy and heroic nature. There's always been serious elements in One Punch Man, but not always in a positive way. See, where Moomin Rider was taken and treated with a tremendous amount of respect, in the story this reflects his positive and heroic character. But we have other serious characters, like Speed and Sonic, who are treated diabolically by Saitama and the greater narrative, disrespecting him due to his negative characterization. With that being said, I think it's a good time to start talking about the serious narrative in this arc. One of the major plot holes I spoke about earlier in the Monster Association arc was who was Gyro, or more accurately, who is Psychos, and what is her relation to our psychic sisters. She was the mastermind behind the Monster Association, so she is not to be taken lightly. It took everything to keep her from destroying the world as we know it. But because she was overshadowed by Cosmic Garo's fight after, I felt that most overlook her impact in the story. But I'll get into that later. Look, the title of this arc is The Psychic Sisters, so let's have a look at them. Picking up where the last arc left off, we are left a lot of info about what drives these two women, both of which are greatly affected, either directly or indirectly, by one man, Blast. When Blast rescued Tornado from that lab, he instilled upon her a rule to live by. It's a need to be so overwhelmingly powerful that she doesn't need anyone's help, and she can use this strength to protect those she calls friends or family. It affects how she lives to this day, and it affects her to the very core. I think it's the reason for the distance she keeps with everyone in the story, her sister included. There was only ever one person that ever lived up to this rule aside from her, and because of that, she must at all cost protect her weak sister. Blast is someone she can't even be in contact with, someone who has profoundly affected her life, and she hasn't been able to talk to him since. It's clear she is somewhat deluded herself to what really matters in life, and she's done this from such an early age. When she breaks into her sister's room while trying to locate and find her, she scares Blizzard so much that she activates the latent psychic abilities within her. Even though Tornado genuinely has love for her sister, she does not show it. Instead, Tornado tries to shelter her sister as much as she possibly can, away from any danger that she's able to stop. Like an overbearing parent, afraid to let her child actually live within reality. This worldview, if left unchecked, would lead her to become quite the tyrant, and we can see the negative effects of her actions within Blizzard. Blizzard is filled with an overwhelming need for power, whether that's because of her own needs or simply because she wants to live up to her sister's expectations. She wants to stand alongside her. At first glance, it might seem this need for power is to progress her career or simply her status, but it's clearly not the case. It's an inferiority complex that is derived from her sister's actions. Her sister constantly pushing her out of danger, stopping her from growing, despite Blizzard's wishes. Blizzard clearly wants to progress through the Hero Association and states several times that she's stuck where she is right now. And we learn that this affects her greatly. She despises how weak she is and surrounds herself with weak people in order to feel better about said insecurity, an insecurity that is caused by Tornado and indirectly Blast. It was incredibly short-sighted for Blast to distill these words upon a child, a traumatized child with unimaginable power. Things could have gone so much worse if those words weren't perceived in the direct and exact manner that they were. They could have directly led to untold destruction, but they did lead to conflict within this family. And honestly, this section, this dynamic, these three characters was so fascinating in my opinion. Overlooked in the Monster Association arc where there is so much going on. Good character writing like this was overlooked, muddied down by the spectacle and oversaturation that took hold of that arc. That being said, we're not here to talk about that arc today. Although the background is paramount to understand the material in this arc, we technically haven't even touched the surface. Let me set the stage. Psychos, the leader of the Monster Association arc, has been taken into custody after the events of the greater Monster Association arc, concluding with Cosmic Garo. She's taken into custody by Blizzard. She was held at the Hero Association deep underground, where she is strapped to a chair and being drugged so she can't use her latent psychic abilities. The Hero Association is running low on funds, or simply trying to locate avenues of revenue. So they're selling her off to a mysterious laboratory, the same group that experimented on Tornado. Now that the stage is set, let me introduce the players. Group 1. Tornado and Blizzard team up with a two-pronged attempt to save Psychos from these people experimenting on her. Tornado is doing it out of frustration for the organization and the pain that said organization has caused to her in the past. But Blizzard is doing it because she has a shared history with Psychos, one she feels guilty about for wronging her and destroying her life, drastically changing where she ended up. Group 2. The experimental lab sends some of their own. Appolo is the leader, at least, of this expedition from the lab, the organization responsible for what happened to Tornado. They plan on mutilating and experimenting on Psychos so they can revolutionize their own production of espers, or psychics. Appolo is one of said projects. He's quoted to be, at least, a lab-grown psychic. Although very powerful, probably more powerful than Blizzard, he fails in comparison to Tornado. In Group 3, Blizzard picks up our boy Saitama for some extra muscle. However, Saitama came along for his own reasons. He didn't come out of kindness of his heart because he owes Blizzard nothing. He came along because he wanted to find the one responsible for destroying his city and, more particularly, his home within it. He wants to confront Tornado and express his grievances. When all parties arrive at the scene, conflict is immediately started. Tornado pretends she's not working with Blizzard in order to capture Psychos. Blizzard pretends to fight her for a brief moment with Appolo, both working together to protect Psychos from Tornado. Obviously fate at Blizzard's end, but as we know, but the dynamic is nonetheless fairly interesting. Appolo is way stronger than expected, his psychic power being recognized by Blizzard herself. Due to this, his goal shifts. Instead of taking one psychic home to the lab with him, he plans on capturing all three, Blizzard and Tornado included. But how does Saitama play into this? He's ready to confront Tornado, and he is very ready to express his choice words. However, the ensuing battle makes the monolith that they are in shake and crack. One of those cracks just so happens to send Saitama Looney Tunes falling deeper into the labyrinth that is the underground levels, where he finds some new friends, demon-ranked monsters being held in the lower levels. With Saitama sidelined, Tornado and Appolo are free to battle it out. Appolo, knowing he would be overpowered by Tornado, sent a spy into the Blizzard group and poisoned Blizzard. Appolo now has a hostage. This infuriates Tornado. As we discussed earlier, if there's one thing that will push her to the edge, it's the well-being of her sister. She allows Appolo to capture her, only to remove the poison from Blizzard and unleash her wrath upon Appolo. However, she does not only ensue said wrath on Appolo, she is disgusted by the weakness of the greater Blizzard group for not being able to protect her sister and for weighing her down. She decides that if she breaks every single one of them, they won't be able to act as heroes and thus will no longer weigh her down. But before she can, she's stopped by Saitama, who for once is trying to be the voice of reason. I love this so much, it just works. One thing I can't stand from a story is if a character is in a situation only because the plot needs them to be there. Think back to all the shows like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, where 5 characters have to explain something, but aside from them needing to be there to be a plot explainer, they have no reason as individuals to be there. Every member of this interaction has a valid reason for being there, whether that's Blizzard and her need to save a friend turned enemy, or Saitama wanting to speak his mind, becoming a certified Karen. This makes the situation real and believable within the story. And we get this alongside funny moments like Saitama falling down said crack and Blizzard's reaction and attempts to save him once said crack closes up. But the best part of this entire situation is how all of Tornado's frustration that is built up by people like Appolo and the Blizzard group are now being focused in to one point, Saitama. And we all know how that's gonna go. If there's one thing we know about Saitama in this arc is that he doesn't like all the damage that's being caused by heroes. And because of that, Saitama grabs Tornado and jumps into an open space to save the building that they're living in. Thousands of people are living here. The fight ensues and it's filled with spectacle, funny moments, and genuinely touching moments, as Tornado unleashes her full power on our caped Baldy, and King sees her panties. But when she wears herself out, Saitama imparts some wisdom before going on his way. She needs to be more careful of breaking people's stuff and fighting. If she does that, she'll make a great hero. After this, for whatever reason, her attitude immediately changes towards Saitama. Whether that's because she recognizes his strength or because she reminds him of someone else, it doesn't matter. Because the fact that someone who was as weak as Saitama was can become as strong as he is now makes her feel that she should be more tolerant of the weaker members of the Blizzard group. And that's basically the conclusion of the battle. And how they save Psychos is that they take the dead bodies of all the monsters that Saitama killed earlier, spread them out all over the landscape, and claim that the damage was caused by Tornado defending the Hero Association. And in that ensuing chaos, Blizzard saves Psychos. Psychic Sister stands out not only for the usual action, but its emotional depth and thematic weight. At its core, it's a story about strength, trauma, and the burdens we place on ourselves and onto others. Tornado's obsession with control stems from a childhood shaped by fear and misguided ideas of power, while Blizzard's insecurities are the ripple effects of that very mindset. Their dynamic, once overshadowed in entire arcs, takes center stage here, delivering genuine emotional payoff. And what makes this arc especially satisfying is how characters' presence feels earned. Saitama isn't just there for comedic relief. He's also a moral compass, a grounded force who challenges Tornado, not with fists, although they do, but with common sense and unexpected empathy. His fight with her is less about dominance, at least for him, but it's about deconstruction and tearing down the myth that she has built around herself.